This is the Living Numbers Podcast.
This is the Living Numbers Podcast, and I am your host, Tony Rambles. Thank you for coming back to check out episode 34, part 2 with Gerald and Santana, the matchmakers, the lawyers, the super smart people. I loved our conversation, and it is not over. But first, I want to say thank you for coming back. Make sure you like, subscribe, download, follow me on Instagram at _Tony Rambles _. You can email the show at TonyRambles@gmail.com. And let's get back into episode 34. And you can talk or you don't have to talk. You can really. I was in a room where this one person that I follow, she's a teacher, and I think she's in Philly.
Cool.
And so she owns a school, and so she was talking about. They were talking about like the Whoopi Goldberg thing that happened.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
If you want to refresh us, like what exactly happened,
Okay, so
I have a guess, but I don't know.
So that is also one of the things I wanted to talk about. So Whoopi Goldberg got suspended for 2 weeks from The View. That's our number there, 2 weeks from The View. And she got suspended because, and I'm paraphrasing here, the kind of essence of what she was trying to say is the Holocaust was not based on race because Jews are white and the Nazis are white. That's what she was saying. The Holocaust wasn't a people issue. People do bad things to people, and we have to stop it because they started banning books in a school in a district in, I think it was Tennessee.
Yeah.
And so they were saying, like, how will people know if we continue to ban books? Like, how are our younger generations know about all of these issues? How we're going to explain it to them? We don't even have any more books because you banned all of them. So she was just saying how this is an example of people being bad to people. And she was like, it wasn't a race thing. It wasn't racist. These people are white. These people are white. What are you talking about? So that's where she got into the hot water. And I think I understood what she was saying based on the way that we look at race in
as
America.
Black people, especially.
Especially as black people, because racism is based on color. In the United States, I can't really speak for everywhere because obviously the Nazis' perception of race didn't really have anything to do with color. It was about their religious background.
And eugenics. They like that old, like they were more. I mean, and even at one time in the United States, they saw like people of Irish and Jewish descent as like different races. Like they didn't consider them like the quote unquote regular white folk.
Right. So if we were to look at the definition for race, it is a categorization of humans based on shared physical or social qualities into groups generally viewed as distinct within a given society. So within that definition, being Jewish would constitute race, right? Because it says, or social qualities. Right? So
yeah, so it's not just physical. Like the definition I'm looking at, it says only physical. It only says physical. It just appears that her definition is slightly different and includes the social, in which case all it is a quibble on definitions. Yeah. Whoopi may narrow her definition to the physical.
Correct.
So that there's no physical distinction.
Race.
There doesn't seem to be a physical distinction between Jews and Germans.
Right.
The way there is between white people and black people. There's a very noticeable physical difference. But then
you can also look at, if I'm from Nigeria and I can be Jewish.
Yeah.
If you are white, you cannot be black.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, like, I mean, I'm not defending Whoopi. I really have no skin in this game. So don't come at me, please. I'm not saying she was right or wrong. I'm just saying I understand the perspective that she was trying to give.
Sure. And it really comes down to, again, definition. Some people, they're basically objecting to her perspective on what race is and what racism is. And they believe in the view, and the people that they're advocating for believe racism is broad enough to include the distinction between Jews and the Nazi Germans.
Right. And that was the Nazis'
really
perception of what it was.
Yeah.
So that's really the only thing that matters.
Sure.
Because those were the people that were systemically wiping these people out. So that's what they thought. So that's, I think, technically what we have to go on.
I also think, as we said, Whoopi is speaking from the perspective of a black person in America.
Yes.
And I also think we're very far removed, or at least feel like we're far removed. But, even in our lifetime, like not our lifetime, but I say a parent's lifetime, 1960s, we were just watching a documentary about Jackie Kennedy, and, the announcer or the narrator in that documentary was saying her and her sister had Irish and Jewish ancestry, I think, on both sides, and that in the high society back then, that was kind of frowned upon. Like, people would prefer people without Irish or Jewish ancestry to marry.
Right.
So even 1960s, not that long ago, and even in America,
50 years.
Right, they were still
60.
60 is close, 50 to 60. Yeah.
So even in America, just 50, 60 years ago, being Jewish was still looked at as being distinctly different than being just white.
Right.
So I think there's a way to see it, I guess, from both parts.
Yeah, I think ultimately all it is like, let's stop quibbling over definitions or whose definition is right or wrong.
Right.
It's like people are arguing, what is racism? Racism is X. And then somebody says, no, racism is Y. Well, all we have to do, folks, is come up with a different definition, come up with a different word to describe what you're talking about. If we say race is X, then race is X, and then whatever Y is, let's come up with a different word.
Yeah.
Religiosism or something like that. I'm just saying, like, if they don't like it,
everything is racism.
Exactly.
It's something else.
So just call it something else. And if anything, Whoopi was saying that's not racism. It's this otherism. Yes. And this otherism is still a problem that needs to be fixed in society.
There you go.
So let's not fight over words, man. Let's just pick a word for what you are describing. Or if people are like, I always think of make the word have the narrowest meaning possible. That's how communication is possible. If you're saying race not only includes this, it includes that, then you're broadening the definition. There's more included. And when there's more included, a word kind of, the meaning is diluted.
Correct.
It's reduced. So narrow the meaning of the word as much as possible and come up with a different word to describe what you're talking about. I don't know if I'm talking over people's heads. I'm kind of like a philosophy. I have a philosophy minor. I'm a logician. So I like to think very narrowly, focused.
If we say that this is a guitar, these are what guitars look like. We can't now say that guitars also look like these, what you're sitting in. It will go, well, man, I played the guitar. They're like, oh, you played one of these? How do you play this? You can't play that. You go, wait a second. That's a chair.
Yes.
We have a name for that already. It's not guitar. It's chairs.
That's
okay, got it.
Hit it.
This is a guitar.
That's a guitar.
We call those guitars. This is a chair.
Right.
We call those chairs. You can't play a chair. You go, yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
You're right. You can play guitars.
Exactly. And even within guitars, there's a subset. There's an acoustic, and then there's an electric.
There you go.
Well, I guess one thing I would say is I do feel like, we know being a Jew is both a religion and a race. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they have kind of distinguished themselves even from the Bible times. Like, we hear, like, Jew and Gentile. Like, we don't know exactly what they look like. Like, we don't have pictures in the Bible.
Right.
So I feel like they've always kind of distinguished themselves.
Yeah. I mean...
Well, how could... What's up? Here we go.
Oh, we're about to go into...
Okay, now my question is...
Yes. Are you afraid? I'll ask...
How can Jewish be a race if you can be... Black, white, Indian, Native American, and be a Jew?
It's twofold. So you can be Jew religion or Jew racially. So there are people who are Jewish racially who don't practice Judaism.
True. Like, I think even the Bible talks about it. There are people who are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right. Yeah. Okay. At least nowadays, who they may biologically descend from them, but they may be atheists religiously or philosophically. And then there are people who are not Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's physical descendants, but they are proselytes or converts to the Jewish religion.
And to tie this whole thing back to matchmaking, there are special matchmakers for Jewish people, like that. You know, they want to stay within their race, and especially I think for there's a bunch of different, honestly, sections of Jewish culture, but the overall thing that I understand from Jewish matchmakers is that the child's heritage goes based off of the mother. So you have a lot of successful Jewish men who want to marry a Jewish woman because they want their kids to be Jew, both like racially and religiously. So that's a whole thing. So even to this day, we're seeing that they're not just identifying as, you know, regular white folk per se.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of information. So I guess tying it back to where this all started is when I was on Clubhouse, I was listening to this conversation.
We just did the whole Clubhouse.
I did not say anything because I'm just like, let me sit and learn, because there's a ton of stuff out there. Like, no one can know everything. So there are times where you do have to just sit and be quiet, and things that you think you know or think you believe are going to be challenged, right? And so then you have to kind of always self-evaluate. Like, what is this that I believe? Why do I believe in it? Or what is this that I think that I know? It could just be information. Not everything has to tie back to beliefs. But you have to always continue to evaluate these things. And thus, the person that you're going to be with or match made with, these are things that you always have to kind of know and learn from and grow with. And I'm sure you all just being married for less than a year are understanding, like, things change. And sometimes they change really slow, and sometimes they change rapidly.
Right.
And so, I mean, wow. Another slow thing, last thing. And this also talks about race, since this is also Black History Month. There was recently a coach in the NFL who got fired, and many people believe that it stems from racist hiring and interviewing practices by the NFL. Here's my number here, and this is really, really good. Okay, the guy that got fired from the Miami Dolphins, his name is Brian Flores. His winning percentage is 49%.
Okay. One
game less than half. I think he's 24-25. There's another coach who was in the Super Bowl this year, actually. His second Super Bowl. His winning percentage is 48%. This guy still has his job. His name is Kyle Shanahan. Now, the thing that is difficult about this is when minority coaches, usually mostly Black, have a losing record, right? For maybe 1 year, they don't get the same chance as their white brethren. And so, as lawyers, okay.
Nothing we say here is legal advice.
Not at all. I just want to know your perspective, because, like, I don't know, like, litigation and arbitration, like, these words, they go over my head. Because I don't know them. I don't practice them. Okay, so if somebody was to go into litigation for something like this, like, what are some things that they would have to, like, look into? What would you have to be sure of?
Like the burden of proof.
Yeah. So, baby, you could chime in anytime, but I think when it comes to litigation, I mean, it's a very costly enterprise. And when you're talking about football coaches in the NFL, we're talking about millions of dollars in litigation fees, whether your lawyer charges by the hour or charges a lump sum, like whatever you recover. Like the coach is suing to make maybe a monetary recovery.
It's a class action suit.
Okay, fair enough. So they're looking to recover monetary damages for their pain, suffering, losses, et cetera, and then the lawyer gets a cut of that. That's the contingency fee-based type of practice. Either way, what happens, I mean, you file a lawsuit, and then, and I might be accelerating the process, but you go into what's known as discovery, where you're trying to discover information from the parties. Like, I want these documents, I want these videotapes, I want to know X, Y, Z, what happened, the minutes of this meeting. I want all the dirty details. I want nothing hidden from me. The only things that can be withheld are what's known as attorney work product, or what's the other thing, babe? Attorney work product, or
like privilege.
Yeah, privileged, confidential, like confidential communications between a lawyer and the client. Those are prohibited from discovery unless the other party can show like there's information there. Why they absolutely cannot get it anywhere else. Right. So we need that. Like you have to. It's really hard to justify. There's a very high standard to prove that. So attorney work product and confidential privilege between client and attorney, right? Privacy.
Yeah. And I think just broadly, this is me also trying to remember things from law school. Yeah. But from what I remember, and just from working, I think under the Civil Rights Act and just in that area of law, you have facial discrimination and then a discrimination that's not discriminatory on its face, right? Like there used to be, the Jim Crow laws where it's like you cannot go to law school if you are black. Like that's just facially discriminatory. Right. Like on its face, it's racist.
With nothing else being said, this by itself is totally racist.
Yeah, but then another standard is to look at the disproportionate impact.
Yeah.
And so that's like, okay, we have this policy and it may seem neutral, like, oh, it doesn't say black people can't do it, but we kind of see that with the literacy test to allow you to read. So a disproportionate number of a protected group are not passing this facially neutral test.
Right.
And then that's going to trigger that investigation,
yes.
Trigger that lawsuit.
It could still be considered discriminatory even if it's not so obviously.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So it doesn't flat out say it, but it's kind of just an underlying thing.
That it affects the same group of people as if it were facial. Like as if it were the obvious, like we don't like this group of people, protect a group of people. And so we're going to make up a law that doesn't directly target them, it indirectly targets them. So even that's still discriminatory. But then there's a third class where it may just happen to, but you could show that it impacts other protected classes, or it doesn't exclusively impact this class in a very, whether directly or indirectly, you could still show that even though it happens to, like there's a way to craft the argument to say it's not discriminatory. So it's like,
and then there's like another level.
Yeah.
So even if you show those numbers, like I'm just putting it out there. If I were to be the attorney for this guy suing the NFL, one of the things I would look into are historical statistics. How many black coaches were there? How many of them didn't meet this, standard?
Criteria, yeah.
And even if you prove that, even if you have hard facts and data, the other side still gets a chance to explain it. If they have a good reason as to why, and it's not racially motivated, then it could still be okay.
Right. Like when I think about black head coaches, I don't know. I only know of one other one. What's the name of the coach of the? He might still be the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin. So I'm pretty sure he hasn't always had a winning record. He's been coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
He's never had a losing record.
Oh, what? Okay, forgive me.
Hey, shout out to Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Come on. My father-in-law is a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, by the way.
Yeah.
Never had a losing record.
Okay, thank you for correcting me, Tony. See, that's why I really was asked, has he had a losing record? I thought he did, but I was wrong.
But the thing is, okay, and you bring up Mike Tomlin, and it's a great point. He is put in a situation with one of the most stable organizations in all of professional sports. Okay, so this and the Rooneys are one of the more upstanding organizations. Like obviously they give black people, minorities, chances. They're not one of the places that you have to worry about. But also you have to look at, he was given an opportunity, and he was given in the NFL you need a quarterback to succeed. Right? And so sometimes you go, well, I never had a quarterback. You've never given me an opportunity to succeed. Like all of these great coaches, they've had a player at a very pivotal position. That's like saying you got to run this company and it has to be profitable, but you don't get a CEO. You cannot hire a CEO.
Right.
Or you know what? You can hire one, but he's got to be a bum. He's a bum. And so, what is the likelihood that company is going to be successful without having this very, very prominent, important person and having a good one?
Right.
And so a lot of times where you go, well, this guy, he got a chance. He got 5 years to find his good CEO. I got 2. And then that guy got fired. He got another job the next year. I got 2 years, got fired, and never got another job.
Yeah.
So they get a longer leash and they get another opportunity after they have messed up or gotten fired or didn't meet the standard. And that's the problem that minority coaches are facing, specifically in the NFL, because it's like, well, okay, yeah, like, all right, I didn't meet the criteria, right? Well, I at least deserve another shot, right? This guy is a bum head coach. It's his third shot at his third bite at the apple. So, how do you...
Right. My question is, they're comparing it to Kyle Shanahan. Was he coach of which team?
Kyle Shanahan is the coach of the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, and so he's also had a losing record.
Yeah, I think he had a good season, and then a bad season, and then a good season.
Gotcha.
So, and then Brian Flores kind of had like 3 okay seasons, but he never had as good a team as Kyle Shanahan.
Like the pieces of the puzzle weren't really what it took to make an appearance in the playoffs.
The owner for the Miami Dolphins was saying that I will pay you extra if you lose. We want to lose.
Who pay who?
The coach.
Oh.
He said take longer vacations, don't work as hard, do what you can to make sure we lose so we can get a higher draft pick. Right? So you as an owner, you're undermining what the coach is trying to do, which is win every single game.
So hold on. See, now even I'm confused. So he's suing the NFL. What does the NFL have to do with the coach? The coach is fired by the organization, not the NFL. So even me, I'm like, so why is he suing the NFL? Forgive me if I'm just missing the point.
Because the owners have these hiring practices that give more opportunities to white people and not black people. That is the problem. There's only one black head coach, and that's Mike Tomlin. There are no other black head coaches in the league that's 70% black.
You're right.
So offensive coordinators are not going, those jobs are not going to black guys. Quarterback coaches, those jobs are not going to black guys. And these are the 2 positions that directly lead to being an NFL head coach.
I see.
So, like y'all said, it's kind of undermining from the inside, not saying that, we're not saying no one can get these jobs. We're not saying black people can't be quarterback coaches, but we're not going to hire any black guys to be quarterback coaches.
Sure. And I guess, so it's definitely a problem, but now analyzing it legally, what can the NFL do if it's it's basically a bunch of organizational heads, like these, the team owners come together, they decide. It's like you sue the team owners, is there
how do you fix it?
Yeah, because can the NFL enact a rule saying you have to blah 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 do this? Like, to me, it seems like you deal with each organization separately, but okay, so the owners have their hiring practices, but each owner has to pick their own hiring practices. You don't have to follow suit.
Herein lies the problem,
right? Okay.
Because you can't tell me who to hire. It's my organization. If I want to hire Gerald in Santana, you can't tell me that I can't do that.
Right. So then why are you suing the NFL when the organizations will push back? Like, why are you dictating to us who we must hire? I'm not against hiring black coaches. I have certain standards.
Haven't found one that I like.
Exactly. Like, you have to be able to, for Flores and his legal team, they have to show that this coach, just because the numbers show that black coaches don't end up being offensive coordinators, quarterbacks, coaches, and head coaches, doesn't mean that racism is involved. That's the whole, you have to be able to show that.
You got to be able to prove it.
Exactly. Which is very challenging to do.
Yeah, I think, that's the other part of it. Like I said, even if you were to bring these facts and historical data to show, you see, this disproportionately affects people of color. Well, the other side also, the court basically is balancing. This is like that gray area of civil rights where it's not as black and white as you think. It's really a balancing test. We have to balance between not discriminating racially against people, but also not placing undue burden on people because, it's a quote-unquote free country. People should be able to do what they want. And to be honest, sometimes some of those cases, from my opinion, can be hard to prove unless you have the smoking gun. Like an email that literally says, "Don't hire that guy," or "We want that guy gone."
Don't hire black people
because
around here.
he's black. And how often are people sending emails like that?
Right, like I think there's a coach, the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders who was fired.
John Gruden.
John Gruden. Like they got an email on him talking about somebody with big lips, making fun of somebody with big lips or something like that. Now you could tell that's clear evidence that there's something like somebody mocking black people, right?
But even then, they might try to explain it. That everything
like
is
anybody can have big lips. What do you mean?
Yeah, something like that. Racial. But then I think there's a podcaster who was exposed is throwing around the N-word in his podcast, and he was white. And that one, he was like, he's just playing. Why say the N-word when I could just say?
Come on, guy.
Right, but then he ended up having to apologize because he was costing Spotify access to certain musicians. Like certain musicians quit Spotify because Spotify featured his podcast. Right. So I forget his name, but either way,
wait a second. Was that Joe Rogan?
Yes, Joe Rogan.
It was him?
Yeah, it was him. So yeah, so there's overtly racist stuff like that, but then there's the kind of subtle, not directly seems racist, but may not be.
And it's really hard sometimes to prove to like a legal standard, you know. And you know, that's part of why we continue to do this, right? People think after, you know, the cases of the civil rights era, you know, 1960s, those landmark cases, Brown versus Board of Education, people think it's over, you know, we got this ruling, but we're constantly redefining things and constantly redefining what racism looks like as the world changes and as circumstances change.
Yeah. At some point, I think, and this is kind of a challenge I present to people, I think at some point we just have to take ownership. The world is going to discriminate, but at what point, and I'm just going to be blunt, at what point will we no longer be the victim and just go out and get it? You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, I think if one group of people don't give me the outcome in my situation that I want, I just go and get it. Like, I look at my last job, and I saw people making moves, getting into like management positions that I was interested in. And I was pursuing those same opportunities. They were extremely hard to come by. I was trying to talk to different managers, say, hey, give me a shot. Think about doing this or that. I was putting in good work. I was putting in the time. Those opportunities didn't come. So what I do? I went to law school. I went to business school. I got me a couple more degrees, and now I'm a lawyer. Like, I made the switch. I didn't say, it looked like people of other ethnic groups were getting into those spaces and those places. I mean, I go out there and, like, in a way set myself back. Like, I'm taking up so much of my time, taking these people to court or going into arbitration, this or that, when I could just go and put my energy into getting the outcome that I want and just doing it. So I'm a big advocate for, I'm not opposed to pushing for change and civil rights and stuff like that. Sure. Things need to happen. Things need to change. I'm just more of a stronger proponent of, if you don't get it where you're currently looking, keep moving. You're going to get it somewhere. And at least I think generally in society, generally speaking, you can still get the outcomes. Now, there's the part about certain people, like people in the black community. Not everybody in the black community has access, right? Because I actually am an immigrant. I'm not like a native. I'm not a native person. Like I'm an immigrant, so I kind of came into, like, I would say coming to America was kind of a downgrade for us because my parents were business owners in Kenya. We were in the upper middle class. We were doing well, but still we came here because opportunities were better for the kids, us, me and my siblings. And so my parents took some lumps, but overall, like, I can't say I grew up like in very difficult or dire conditions. But
yeah.
But maybe my wife wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I think that I totally respect where you're coming from. I think, at some point we can't allow these things that we're seeing to mentally cripple us from still pursuing our dreams, right? Regardless if racism is a thing, regardless if there's this proverbial glass ceiling, we still have to reach above the glass. And, like my husband said, for him, from his perspective, coming to this country, having been in a country that was majority black, seeing your parents being successful, I'm sure that is a great deal and a great helper to you being able to think that way. But I think although the physical chains are gone from us, many African Americans, we still have the mental chains of slavery. You know, it's hard for us to even envision that because our parents didn't, you know, own businesses or aren't, you know, highly educated and things of that nature. And so even, you know, that's why we say representation matters. Seeing people that look like you in certain positions is so impactful, right? Like, you were only on the continent for the first 6 years of your life, and I could see just the difference it made. I'm sure for you, it was never a question, like, are you going to college? Are you going to get married? These are things that you look at as a birthright. Like, of course, like, you would be offended if someone asked you something like that. But I think a lot of us sometimes we allow these things that are going on around us, and I don't say allow in a way to justify or to minimize it, to, again, mentally cripple us or to put those mental chains on us and really limit ourselves to what we can do. So it is scary, and it can be very intimidating, but I definitely support what you said. Like, just still go for it, because you never know what can happen, even though it's hard.
And I want to add that I may not have the background most people look at as, oh, how can you speak for me when there are just barriers for me to get the outcomes that I want in life? My wife is an example of somebody who grew up had a rough upbringing, and then grew up with everything other people had access to in life, even to some extent like what I had, but she still came out strong. She still came out on top. She still went to undergrad. She still went to law school, and she achieved because there were certain people who, in a way, didn't think that she could do what she did, but she ended up pulling it off. And on top of it, like, she has the accolades and successes in her life, not having the fortunes that other people had. And so she's an example of somebody who has overcome, and I admire her for that.
I think now, I feel like access is very different than what we grew up with. And I say that from a person that's 32, let alone somebody that's in their 40s or in their 50s. Kids now have access to so much more than we ever had access to growing up. I mean, the internet was a thing, and then it became more and more prevalent until now. You have access to information anywhere.
Anytime.
Anywhere, anytime. So, personally, I feel like that is an excuse. You can't use that as an excuse anymore.
I think there's the information gap, but there's also the wealth gap. But
I'm not talking about money, because there's money out there for people to go to college, especially people of color. There is money out there, especially if you come from impoverished places. Okay, so scholarships and grants and that kind of stuff, right? So the money is there. Now, are you going to? Because you can do a very quick Google search. Scholarships for Black people.
Yeah.
Jobs for Black.
Yeah.
We don't even have to say it about a job, because there are people who are not Black that are poor. Better jobs. Google search. And then you'll get tons and tons of websites to go to, videos to watch. Oh, jobs that are $100,000 a year. So, like, I don't feel like it was that easy when I was when I was 18 or in high school or middle school or anything like that. But kids growing up now have access to so much more information right at their fingertips. And I say this, if you can make a TikTok video or a YouTube channel or any of that other garbage on any of that other stuff on social media, then you can find a way to go out and do the things that you want to do. Now, are there going to be barriers? Absolutely. There are barriers for everyone. Is there going to be maybe some racism that you have to go through? Sure. Yeah. Is there going to be some prejudice? As a woman, okay? As a Black man, okay? Of course there are. But the access to that information and how to get around that information or get around those barriers or over or through those barriers, all of those things are accessible. You have people with dedicated YouTube pages to this kind of stuff that go, well, this is what I went through. Podcasts, ebooks. There's tons of stuff out there. So if you say, well, I just don't know how, you're just not trying.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion. I don't think that is an excuse anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
I think kind of what you're saying, passing down this information and telling the youth what lies ahead is a big part of it, because I think for me, being around people and learning things, and even my parents, I'm the first generation college graduate, but they were very honest with me. They said it's hard. Like, they felt stuck. They didn't necessarily have careers. They felt like they had jobs, and I saw how that was, like, their job security.
How old are your parents?
They are 60. So, they were limited in the types of jobs they can do. Sometimes the positions that they had, for as old as they were and as long as they were working there, they were still kind of treated like they're being micromanaged.
Yeah.
And I just kind of saw the stress from work coupled with just the lack of pay. And so for me, it was just being around people who saw the world in a different way and who saw education as a portal to a different way of life. And so I think sometimes people underestimate college, or we hear, oh, it's just a degree, or oh, college is this, college is that. And I'm not saying college is for everyone, right? There are great business owners, trade schools, all this stuff. But I say just do your research. Figure out what kind of life you want and figure out the steps you need to take to make it. Right. Because you can start today and look at it. I used to hear a bunch of people when I was interested in going to law school, oh, it's going to take so long. Oh, you have to go another 3 years after this 4 years. Mm-hmm. But guess what? 7 years from now, you can be an attorney, or 7 years from now, you can still be complaining at your job.
Dang, drop the gauntlet. Mm-hmm. That's true. And, I mean, think about the great resignation that just happened over the past, since COVID happened. Yeah. And people started working remotely. People said, you know what? I don't like what I'm doing right now. I am going to change it. I'm going to make a conscious decision to do something else. Yeah. Now, that might be going into business for yourself. That might be finding a different job or a different company, but that is available and accessible. And all you have to do is look, because all of that stuff is at our fingertips these days. Like, it's not easy, but it's accessible. That is the word that I'm going to continue to use. And, you just have to make the decision and put in the work. You can't just decide to go to law school and not actually do the work. That doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So...
And definitely thinking out those decisions. Anyone, especially young people who are considering whether or not they want to go to college, I'm not telling you college is the only route. Make sure you know what you want to do. I know a lot of people who went to college, did a major, and then realized that they didn't properly vet their program. They didn't properly think out what they really wanted to do with it. Mm-hmm. So don't just give these big schools your money. Really think about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this also applies to parents. Like, don't pressure your kids. You have to get a degree only to find that they're not really inspired to use it. Right. And then you put them in a situation, unless you pay for it outright, you put them in debt, and then they have to carry that baggage the rest of their lives. So, like,
it goes hand in hand.
If college isn't a good fit, go to a trade school. Like, you have to figure out a way to be independent and make your own living. Like, you can't live off of me, your parent, the rest of our lives. You have to go out and do your thing.
Yep.
And so whether that's college or a trade school, figure out what you want to do and get it done. Like, I'm not going to look down on you because you didn't get all the way to graduate school.
Yeah. And so I started this podcast because of the unique class that we went through at church. And it really was like, I already know that I'm a teacher. That's just who I am. This is what I do. Yeah. And so going through that training, that class, it helps you to really narrow down what it is that you're good at and the things that you do that are natural for you. And so as you start to figure those things out, then you can really start to hone in. Okay, how can I take this, who I am, my gift, and now where does that align as far as like me trying to find an occupation, trying to find a career? And so, obviously, I am a teacher, I'm a coach, and I do this, and all of these things are allowing me to use my giftedness. So all the setting up and all that stuff, that part stinks. But when we get on here and we just talk, and I'm able to share ideas and I'm able to help people to understand things and have these kind of conversations, then I'm totally, I'm in my element. And so one day when the podcast jumps off, somebody's listening to episode, 34? Episode 34, they'll be able to go, man, like even back then, like this was just who he was, and he just used that and he just grew with it. And hopefully people are talking about me like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a show. That was so
beautiful.
beautiful.
The Living Numbers podcast.
The Living Numbers podcast,
Yes,
found
sir.
everywhere you listen to podcasts. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, everywhere. Okay, make sure you rate, review, 5 stars. What else am I missing? Oh, go follow me on Instagram @_TonyRambles_. And you can email the show, onetonyrambles@gmail.com. Y'all want to plug some social medias?
Look us up. Santana Kimani, Gerald Kimani.
Stellar
Stellar Matchmaking.
There we go.
Yeah.
Stellar Matchmaking.
For real. We're here to help you find love.
Is that where the
Check
blog's
out
at?
our website.
Yeah, we'll send you an infographic you can put on the screen.
Excellent. And it's a wrap. This has been the Living Numbers podcast. Signing off. We shall see you all in the next round.
Hopefully because the sun's are in my eyes.
I know.
Hopefully it doesn't look weird.
And it is what it is.